It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story, the search for Nicola Bulley. Police say she is high risk and vulnerable because of significant issues with alcohol which resurfaced over recent months. That unusual update issued tonight. As it emerged, officers had visited her home weeks before she disappeared because of concern over her welfare.
Also tonight, I'm live from Holyrood after the shock resignation of First Minister Nicola Sturgeon. Stepping down, she said, was right for her, her party and her country. Now, the process to replace her.
Be in no doubt, this is really hard for me. My decision comes from a place of duty and of love. Tough love, perhaps, but love nevertheless for my party and above all for the country.
Failed to deliver independence. Her final weeks overshadowed by her stance on trans rights.
Also tonight, rescued from the rubble, we hear how a split-second decision saved the lives of two sisters. And slowing down but not fast enough as inflation eases, why food prices will stay high for several months. Plus, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. It's been 19 days since Nicola Bulley dropped her children off at school, put her dog on a leash and went for a walk along the river in the small village of St Michael's-on-Wyre in Lancashire. Since then, her disappearance has baffled police and intrigued TikTok detectives. And today, as officers defended their methods, they revealed she'd been classed as high risk. Later, in an unusual step, detectives confirmed she had problems with alcohol and that there had been previous concerns about her welfare. Sky's Inzamam Rashid has been following this case from the very start and joins us now live. Inzi.
Well, Kamali, it's been almost 3 weeks since Nicola Bulley went missing, and in an unusual level of detail released by police today, it has thrown a huge question mark of confusion over what happened that Friday morning when Nicola Bulley took her two daughters to school and then took her dog Willow for a walk. In an unprecedented move by Lancashire Police, we learned details of very private family matters which are now playing a key role in this missing persons investigation. The questions keep on mounting, but 20 days on, one has remained the same. What happened to Nicola Bulley? We now know this was a mum of two, vulnerable, with ongoing struggles.
As soon as she was reported missing, following the information that was provided to the police by her partner Paul, and based on a number of specific vulnerabilities that we were made aware of, Nicola was graded as high risk.
But what was it about Nicola that raised alarms? Something police today couldn't answer. Can you just give us a bit more information about what Nikki's partner told you about her vulnerabilities?
I'm not going to go into the details of those individual vulnerabilities. I've asked you to respect the family who are going through unimaginable pain and distress at this moment.
It was, however, a revelation too important to dismiss. Lancashire Police, hours after this news conference, revealed what those specific vulnerabilities were. Nicola had in the past suffered with some significant issues with alcohol, they said, which were brought on by her ongoing struggles with the menopause, and these struggles had resurfaced over recent months. This has caused some real challenges for Paul and the family. Just 17 days before Nicola disappeared, police and health professionals were called to her family home. They attended a report for a concern of welfare. No one at the time was arrested, but it's being investigated. After almost 3 weeks of extensive searching and a major police operation, investigators have theories, but not many answers.
Those hypotheses included the one that she possibly could have gone into the river, that there could have been third-party involvement, and lastly, that she could have left the area voluntarily.
How confident are you and your team that you'll find Nicola Bulley alive?
I hope with all my heart that we find Nicola Bulley alive, more than anything.
How confident are you?
I have told you that my working hypothesis is at the moment, through all the information that we have gathered, that the likelihood is that Nicola has unfortunately gone in the river.
Finding Nicola is everyone's priority here. It's a wonder how hope hasn't faded almost 3 weeks on. Details of the troubles she faced will be no barrier.
Well, look, hope may not be in short supply here, but there will be questions and maybe huge worries as well about how these very private details about Nicola will impact her family, her struggles with alcohol, the fact that police went round to her home on the 10th of January about concerns for welfare. And it was quite odd, police initially today dismissing these details, for them to come out later and give those details this evening. The last 20 days have been hellish for Nicola's family and friends, and this level of information will not help in any way. The bottom line is, though, Nicola remains missing. At home are her 2 daughters, still without a mum, and there is no clear evidence or clues as to where she may be.
Good evening from Holyrood at the end of a momentous day in Scottish politics. This country's longest-serving First Minister and its first female leader, Nicola Sturgeon, unexpectedly resigned today, saying, "In my heart and in my head, I know the time is now." She suffered significant setbacks in her campaign for a second independence referendum and for reform of transgender rights, but insists short-term pressures did not inform her decision. Well, we'll assess Nicola Sturgeon's legacy coming up and the race to replace her. But first, our Scotland correspondent, Conor Gillis, reports now on a significant moment for Scotland and the UK.
Rumour was rife about the future of a First Minister.
In my head and in my heart, I know that time is now. That it is right for me, for my party and for the country. And so today I am announcing my intention to step down as First Minister and leader of my party.
Outside, supporters waited, opponents watched as the bombshell dropped. The moment the UK's most senior female politician called it a day. Leaving at a time of a legal standoff with Downing Street over the Scottish Government making it easier to change gender, something UK ministers are blocking.
I am trying to rationally look. What I'm trying to do is address the issues.
Quitting weeks after it emerged a double rapist, Adam Graham, now known as Isla Bryson, was housed temporarily in a women's prison.
This decision comes from a deeper and longer-term assessment.
Do you believe, though, that the issues, and particularly the row around transgender prisoners, was the straw that broke the camel's back here?
It's not the case that this decision is because of short-term issues. I've faced more short-term issues from time to time over my years in politics than I care to remember. And if it was just that, I wouldn't be standing here today.
Make no mistake, this is a major, highly significant moment in UK politics, but it also leaves the SNP and the independence cause here in Scotland in a perilous position. Nicola Sturgeon has failed in that main mission of hers to deliver a second referendum, and it's unclear when or if that vote will now happen.
The SNP's hope to lead Scotland to a different future was dealt a hammer blow when the Supreme Court ruled Holyrood could not legally hold a second vote. A moment now to reflect from Nicola Sturgeon's predecessor.
You'd have expected, having set her course for this de facto referendum, with all the difficulties it entails, that's the one you would see through. And you'd often expect, challenges happen in politics. So the independence movement has been led to, not a dead end, but certainly a roadblock, and her successor and others in Scotland will have to find a way through it.
And the search for that successor is now underway to replace a formidable force, the figurehead of a movement who's now preparing for life away from the top job. Conor Gillis, Sky News, Edinburgh.
Well, Nicola Sturgeon always said she should be judged by her record, and under her stewardship, her party, the SNP, became an electoral juggernaut. She was a leading force for Scottish independence, of course, but failed to deliver a second referendum vote. And today, visibly moved, she said that no job would come close to being First Minister. Sky's political editor Beth Rigby assesses her legacy.
A leader at the height of her power. Here, Nicola Sturgeon cleaning up in the 2019 general election. All the while dominant in Scottish politics too, as the longest-serving First Minister of Scotland, the first woman to lead the country, and the first whose departure from high office has not involved death, defeat or scandal.
I will never, ever give up on Scottish democracy.
A career spanning 2 decades, punctuated with great highs, but also lows, leaving office her mission unfulfilled. Nicola Sturgeon was born in 1970 in Ayrshire, this part of West Scotland, a Labour heartland. But with Margaret Thatcher in power, it was the SNP she joined at the age of 16. In the late 1980s, as Alex Salmond attempted to make his mark on Westminster, Nicola Sturgeon was in Glasgow, studying law, debating and campaigning. Quiet, serious and focused, she soon impressed within the SNP, later becoming her party's deputy leader and then deputy First Minister to Mr Salmond, the man she described as her mentor. Yes, sir. She soon formalised another relationship, marrying Peter Murrell, the SNP's longtime chief executive. A year later, and an SNP majority at Holyrood in 2011 meant a mandate for an independence referendum and a huge opportunity for Nicola Sturgeon. After the pro-independence campaign lost the 2014 vote and Alex Salmond resigned.
The dream shall never die.
It was that dream that Nicola Sturgeon inherited, succeeding him as Scotland's first female Premier.
A modern and confident Scotland, fit for purpose and fit for all of her people.
And out of Salmond's shadow, Sturgeon shone. The 2015 election, her breakout moment.
It simply cannot be, and it will not be business as usual when it comes to Westminster's dealing with Scotland.
The SNP almost wiped out Scottish Labour and have been the third party at Westminster ever since. Will a change of leadership shift that landscape too?
I'm not complacent. Labour has to set out new ideas, a new vision and a new passion for how we build a more prosperous future for Scotland, and it is a significant moment, a significant opportunity, but that means us setting out what that positive change looks like, and I relish the opportunity to do that.
A strong performer, Nicola Sturgeon impressed in the 2015 TV debates, a master of the selfie too, all helping to build an image of a modern political leader. But when it came to policy, her record much more mixed.
There's no doubt that she was successful at the ballot box, but in terms of using that power, there were key failings. One of them was the education attainment gap, which she said she would close. She made that promise. That never happened. Scotland has got a shameful drugs death record. That barely shifted as well. And look at the chaos in the health service, from the GP service through to A&E and also in the ambulances. There's no doubt that Nicola Sturgeon's domestic record is very patchy.
Scottish Parliament.
As she continued at the ballot box, UK Prime Ministers came and went. Nicola Sturgeon a thorn in the side of successive PMs, a less prickly relationship with her latest counterpart, but their political objectives miles apart.
Let me first start by paying tribute to Nicola Sturgeon for her long-standing public service, and I wish her well in the future. I've consistently said that I think what people in Scotland want to see is their two governments, the Scottish Government and the UK Government, working constructively together on the priorities that really matter to people.
Brexit, another fault line between Holyrood and Westminster. Opposed by the majority of Scots, it reignited the question of Scottish independence again, but failed to get Nicola Sturgeon much closer to an independence vote. The Supreme Court ruling last year that Holyrood
does not have the power to legislate for a referendum on Scottish independence.
Holyrood overruled too over the rights for transgender people as the government in Westminster blocked equality legislation over the fears for the impact on safe spaces for females. But Nicola Sturgeon's potent combination of communication and political skills proved invaluable during the pandemic. She was widely praised for her leadership, even though mistakes were made and many thousands died.
Did you break the ministerial code?
But soon after came perhaps her lowest moment, when the Scottish Government's botched mishandling of harassment complaints against Alex Salmond and Miss Sturgeon's role since turned a friendship into a bitter feud.
I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
By choosing the timing of her departure, Nicola Sturgeon remains the master of her own destiny. But she leaves office having failed to determine Scotland's. That second referendum further away and a vacuum at the top of her party. Scotland's political landscape has shifted, and not necessarily to the SNP's advantage.
Well, the process to replace Nicola Sturgeon is already underway. Once the First Minister has tendered her resignation to the King, then the Scottish Parliament has 28 days to nominate a successor. But first, the SNP must choose a new leader. Candidates must have at least 100 nominations from party members from at least 20 local branches. If more than one candidate receives the required nominations, there will be a postal vote. Front-runners so far include the bookmakers' favourite, Angus Robertson, a former SNP Westminster leader, now Constitution, External Affairs and Culture Secretary. Kate Forbes, the Scottish Finance Secretary, is also well regarded. She is currently on maternity leave. The Health Secretary, Hamza Yousaf, is also in the running, as well as the former party leader, John Swinney, currently Deputy First Minister and Acting Finance Secretary. Well, let's talk live now to Beth. And Beth, the search then for a successor already started after the end of a quite significant era in Scottish politics.
Yes, Dermot, and let's reflect on that era because it really is someone who dominated Scottish politics for over 2 decades now, bowing out. Nicola Sturgeon saying today that she knew in her head and her heart that it was time and the job, the intensity takes its toll. A friend of hers told me that she had had enough, that she wanted to get her life back and she'd become worn down by the internal wranglings within the SNP. But this is far more than just about the personal politics of Nicola Sturgeon. At the heart of this decision, I think, is an admission by the First Minister that she really has run out of road when it comes to trying to force that second referendum. It has been her life's work. What has driven her politics for over 2 decades. And her standing down, I think, is an admission that it is not going to happen in the foreseeable future. And she herself has perhaps run out of ideas. So where it leaves a second referendum is further into the distance. Where it leaves the SNP is at a difficult point because she has been so dominant in Scottish politics. She's effectively handing over the baton to a new generation, hoping that they will come up with the ideas to build momentum that she is clearly losing. And then finally, what does it mean for UK politics? It's a huge moment for the Labour Party. They came in with just 1 MP in the 2019 general election out of 59, 45 seats go into the SNP. Nicola Sturgeon has pretty much wiped them out in Westminster over the past 3 general elections. So for Labour, this is a huge opportunity. A senior politician in Labour saying to me today, this is the moment where they hope they can rebuild trust with Scottish voters. Another saying to me that they're always happy to see a winner bow out of the race. So huge opportunity for Labour, huge uncertainty in Scotland and big ramifications for both Holyrood and Westminster with the departure of Nicola Sturgeon as First Minister.
OK, Beth Rigby, thank you very much. Well, much has been made of Nicola Sturgeon's political legacy, but how did her decades in politics change the lives of voters here? Well, Tom Palmer travelled to Victoria Road in the south side of Glasgow to find out.
nothing stays still. But the south side of Glasgow has become very used to Nicola Sturgeon, even if they don't all agree with her.
She's done a great job taking on the Tories. Nobody else was as formidable as her, and she outshone all her opponents for the past 8 years, outshone them all.
What do you think her legacy will be? She's the longest serving. A failure.
Yeah. NHS is a mess. Schools, education.
I think she did all right through COVID. I think she did her best. But it just feels like that was our peak, and it's all just kind of went a wee bit downhill from there.
Nicola Sturgeon says she wants a more normal life, but will still represent Glasgow's south side and fight her political battles from here, including, of course, the SNP's push for independence.
Hi guys, welcome to Future Cameras.
Opinion polls still have Scotland split down the middle. At Imran's restaurant, he sees the current First Minister as integral to independence.
I feel as if with her departing like this, it's going to crumble.
Why?
I think purely because she was the backbone to this pro-referendum, pro-independence, you know, and now with her departure, it's all going to come down crumbling.
Evening drinks at the Bell Jar. Malcolm helps run the Yes campaign in this part of the city.
What it does is introduce a degree of uncertainty in how things will be in the short term. I mean, I think Nicola's gone in her own terms, and she feels that she's a divisive figure for people who don't want independence, and therefore maybe it will open the door to more people coming over to independence. Time will tell.
In the city centre, those who said no to independence held a brief street party. A First Minister has to somehow represent and serve everyone. After 8 years on this ride, it's time for someone else. Tom Parmenter, Sky News, Glasgow.
Let's bring in our Scotland correspondent, Conor Gillis. And Conor, how then did life change here under Nicola Sturgeon, and what's next?
Well, things have changed a lot, very dramatically, over the course of Nicola Sturgeon's premiership here in Scotland. 8 years in the top job for Nicola Sturgeon. Her supporters would point to her achievements over the course of the last couple of years, putting additional money into the pockets of the poorest families here in Scotland, and of course those emphatic wins in each and every election that she has fought. Her critics, on the other hand, have a very different view. She leaves her job, they say, in a situation where she's failed to deliver or advance the cause of independence. She has failed to deliver a key pledge on education, closing the attainment gap for those from the most deprived backgrounds. And of course, she leaves this position at a time when Scotland's drug deaths are among the worst in Europe. Now, unlike with Alex Salmond back in 2014, there is no clear successor for who takes over from Nicola Sturgeon. I did speak to Keith Brown, the current deputy leader of the SNP, the current Justice Secretary here in Scotland. He didn't rule out that he may be stepping into the fray as part of who comes next. But nominations are now open, and the SNP's National Executive Committee will meet tomorrow night to discuss exactly what happens next.
OK, Conor Gillis, thank you very much.
Now, it was a split-second decision which likely saved the lives of two sisters. As the earthquake struck and their apartment building crumbled around it, Zeynep and Elithe sought safety underneath their bed. Sky's John Sparks witnessed their rescue some 4 days later and spoke to them in hospital afterwards in the Turkish city of Kahramanmaraş, from where he sent this report.
The people of Kahramanmaraş have begun to reclaim their community after the earthquakes destroyed much of the city. But there are acts of courage and endurance they can draw on here from a small number who were rescued from the rubble. And each one has a tale of wonder.
Yine sallanır geçer diye düşündük ama bu sefer öyle olmadı. Direkt bina kaydı böyle. Gitti yani. Hissettim kaydığını, gittiğini hissettim yani. O da kaydı.
Çok kötüydü ama ikimiz olduğu için birbirimize destek verdik yani. Birbirimizden destek aldık. Tek olsaydım kafayı yerdim herhalde hani.
Zeynep and Elithe were imprisoned within the remains of their 7-story apartment building. and would spend more than 4 days without food, water and light. They were freed by an Israeli and Turkish rescue team, and we managed to capture the moment. I could see you in your pajamas. You were shivering. I wonder what it was like.
Evet. Ağlıyordum zaten. Mutlu olmuştum çünkü. Titriyordum, evet, çok soğuktu. Çok soğuktu yani. Ayaklarımı hissetmiyordum soğuktan artık.
Early in the morning of February the 6th, Zeynep discovered her bedroom was shaking from side to side. She then made a life-saving decision.
Bekledim. Sonra zaten aşağıdan kat kat düşme sesleri geldi. Binanın yıkılma sesi geldi. Böyle güm güm gidiyordu. O anda ben kendimi Elif'in kafasını yatağa koydum. Ben de kendimi yatağın altına girdirdim.
The pair soon realized they were stuck under Zeynep's bed with absolutely no means of escape.
Birbirimize dip dibeydik. Ama sağa sola dönme şeyimiz vardı, yani yerimiz vardı. Sağa sola dönebiliyorduk. Yüksekliği de böyle bu kadar bir şeydi yüksekliğimiz. Oturabiliyordum mesela. Bacaklarım ağrıdığında öbür tarafa dönüyordum.
It was damp and it was cold. The temperature plunged below zero at night. So they held on to each other to keep warm. Did you ever lose hope inside?
Oldu. Son günde çıkarmasalar dedim artık yeter bu kadar. Susuzluğa tahammülüm kalmamıştı. Çünkü artık uyuyamıyordum da susuzluktan, kalkamıyordum. Hareket edemiyordum, yani konuşamıyordum da, bağıramıyordum.
Many of those who lived in their neighborhood have lost their lives. We saw local volunteers trying to retrieve the bodies wedged between the cracks of concrete. An unknown number have not been found. Zeynep and Alife's mother and father are also missing, and their daughters are deeply concerned. They haven't seen them since the first earthquake struck.
Annemlere çağırıyordum zaten sürekli, iyi misiniz? Ama ses duyulmuyordu yani. Çok kötüydü yani.
Both sisters suffered cuts and bruising. They were badly dehydrated and feel desperately tired. But the pair are glad to be alive.
I wonder how you think this experience will change your life.
Çünkü bir anlık şeye bakıyor her şey. Bir anda bugün varız, yarın yokuz yani. O yüzden her şeyin tadını çıkararak, anın tadını çıkararak yaşamaya bakacağım.
Their story of resilience shines like a light in this devastated city, where sorrow and loss hang heavy in the air. John Sparks, Sky News, in Kahramanmaraş.
Okay, time now for a look at some of tonight's other news. And the former leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, has hit back at Sir Keir Starmer's decision to block him from standing as a Labour candidate at the next general election. Corbyn called it a flagrant attack on the democratic rights of party members in his constituency of Islington North. Sir Keir spoke this morning after the equalities watchdog found the Labour Party had vastly improved how it deals with allegations of anti-Semitism.
Go in those neighborhoods and take people out. Don't do it!
Well, this was during the sentencing of the hearing for a white supremacist who killed 10 black people at a supermarket in Buffalo in New York in May of last year. An unidentified family member of someone who died charged at Peyton Gendron in the court minutes before he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Now, the cost of living is rising at a lower rate than had been predicted, according to the latest figures out today. Inflation was running at 10.1% in January, compared with 10.5% back in December. But some prices are still rising at even more eye-watering rates. Food went up almost 17% last month. Our business correspondent Gurpreet Narwan reports.
The worst is apparently behind us.
29.13, please.
How much is the magic, that one?
Which one? That one, $2.99.
But when it comes to the food shop, the cost of living is still biting. Sally, a single mum from Ilford, says she's struggling to keep up.
For me, I think it haven't gone down. It's just going up and up and up. You have family, you have kids, you need to feed them. It's not only the food they have, like you need extra things that you have to buy for them. Your fridge have to have like healthy food and everything. So all your wages are going there. The my rent didn't go up, but the food is just taking all my wages.
It's tough on everyone.
It's a common concern.
You come today, it's £2.50. You come back tomorrow, it's £2.70. And it's like a slap on your face. And I've come across a couple of people that stopped to get their shopping done, and then you have to top them off, which is really sad.
But there are some glimmers of hope. Official figures show that the headline rate of inflation has fallen for 3 consecutive months now. After peaking at 11.1% in October, it fell to 10.1% in January. But food prices kept rising robustly at a rate of 16.7%. The figures were in line with forecasts published by the Bank of England, which thinks inflation will fall consistently over the coming months. The rate of inflation may be slowing, but that will provide very little relief to households who are already struggling with their everyday costs. Food prices, for example, are still climbing at their fastest pace in decades. That will soon start slowing, but it doesn't mean prices will be coming down from where they already are. Further up the supply chain, wholesalers say they are battling with costs from energy to raw materials, which are forcing them to keep prices high.
For prices to start coming down, I think we're looking at the back end of this year, if I'm honest. I don't see, and certainly none of my colleagues in the business see, a change in the next four to 5 months. So we are looking really probably 6 months ahead for any relief for consumers.
For the moment then, things shouldn't get any worse, but they aren't getting any better either. Gurpreet Narwan, Sky News.
Now, she became famous after wearing a fur bikini. Tonight, tributes are being paid to Raquel, Welch, one of the most famous Hollywood stars of the 60s and 70s, who's died at the age of 82.
Raquel confesses to a great admiration for Michael York. Well, what girl wouldn't?
Well, Welch, who is pictured here meeting the Queen Mother in 1974, starred in films such as Fantastic Voyage and 1 Million Years BC, and won a Golden Globe for her role in The Three Musketeers. Her agent said that she died following a brief illness.